We're here to talk about formative assessment and its value in legal education. The ABA's new accreditation standards require law schools to utilize both formative and summative assessment methods in the curriculum to measure and improve student learning and to provide meaningful feedback to students. Formative assessment is valuable because it helps students as they're forming, as they're learning. It gives students feedback periodically throughout the course of study so that they know what they understand and what they don't understand, so they can go back and focus on the things that they don't understand with a goal of having them reach mastery as they move ahead in the course. So final exams, final papers, those are all examples of summative assessment. And we do a lot of that in legal education. But what we need to do in legal education is incorporate more formative assessment. And that's what the ABA is asking us to do because it's consistent with learning science. Scholars of learning science tell us that that's the best way for students to learn. So I think of it as a 5-stage process for thinking about assessment. And the place to start is to think about your learning outcomes. The way to create a learning outcome would be to phrase it something like this. Students will be able to argue or defend or compare, analyze, evaluate, explain. Those are all verbs that will help us to really think about what we want the students to do with the knowledge and how can they best demonstrate that knowledge to us. So that's the first stage in this process of developing learning outcomes and creating formative assessments. The second stage would be to figure out what criteria you use in order to determine whether the student has the understanding, whether the student can do what you want them to do. And again, learning science tells us that these criteria should be objective, that they should be clearly explained and even given to the students before the assessment so that students know what they're going to be assessed on. And in some cases, professors can draft the criteria on their own, but I've even heard of professors working with students to draft the criteria, and that part of the process of learning and understanding what they're trying to learn comes through this effort of crafting criteria for assessment. So that's the second stage of the process. So the third stage of the process is to develop exercises or tools that you can use to assess whether the student has the understandings they can do what you want them to do. And there are all sorts of things you can do to assess students. Low stakes quizzes are a perfect thing, and some professors can even start classes every day with a low stakes quiz using clickers, or even throughout the course of a class you can continually use clickers to give students feedback on their understanding. But there are other things as well. Role plays are great to put students in role and have them actually argue or defend or analyze a particular situation, a case. Simulations, anything that asks the student to actually do something over the course of the semester. Even Socratic dialogue can be an effective tool for giving students feedback if done in the right way. So the fourth stage of this process would be to actually provide the feedback. And research says that feedback should be provided as soon as possible after the activity. So after the quiz, give students feedback. After they do the role play, tell them what they've done right or wrong. And so that way students understand it in context and they can reflect upon what they learned, which is the fifth stage. It's actually giving students an opportunity to reflect on the feedback that you give them, and then they can change their experience. Imagine trying to teach a student how to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony on the piano, and doing that by coming in, playing it for the student, and then leaving and telling the student to practice. And then coming in the next week, and again, playing that piano piece, telling the student to practice, and then asking the student at the end of the term to play it for you for the first time. I mean, it seems nonsensical in that situation, and yet that's very much what we do in terms of legal education when we have only a summative form of assessment. And so what the ABA is is asking the Academy to do is to think again about our teaching methodologies and incorporate more of this formative assessment along the way. So that when the student hits the wrong note, we can tell them right there, wait, that's the wrong note, go back, play C instead of F. And that's how, through those mistakes, that students learn.